Okay, so here's today's reading from the Cheonseongyang, page 2136. Whose children are those different races? They have only one parent, God. Who is with us wherever we go? Whether north, south, east, or west in the universe is the Father of humankind. Thus, it would be a mistake for anyone to think that white, black, or yellow people are the owners of America. God is the owner of America. This is also true for Korea. Differences in skin color are nothing more than the result of having to adapt to different climates and environments in different parts of the globe. In areas with large amounts of snowfall, we find mainly white people. Conversely, in places such as Africa, where the rays of the sun are particularly bright, we find mainly black people. Fundamentally, though, people are the same. For example, the color of our blood is the same, and our flesh and bones have the same structure. We all love each other in the same way. Thus, there would be no racial discrimination. This is why the Unification Church has been working through large international weddings to create racial equality. In deference to the laws and principles of nature, we have intermarried all 5 colors of skin. When a black person and a white person marry, it is like the North Pole and the South Pole coming together in unity. When a yellow person and a black person marry and have children, both parents contribute their good attributes, and their offspring are better as a result. Where there is love, there can be no strife. Each of us comes from a different hometown and homeland, but we can all agree that the homeland and hometown of true love is a hometown of faith, peace, and unity. That's from the Cheonseongyang, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, 2136. Today's topic is George Soros' fake race war. And so in Charlottesville, Virginia on Saturday, we had the clashes and the riots and you know, all those things going on. So I'd like to really look at what is going on, what you're really not hearing in the media and all the rhetoric. So let's have a look at how things went down. Let's check this article from the Los Angeles Times. So the consensus was that the police weren't preventing the protesters from clashing with each other. It's a joke, said Larry Engel, a local business owner who faulted police for not separating white supremacists and anti-racist groups that repeatedly clashed before the car attack. There was no buffer zone between opposing groups that gathered on downtown streets and in a city park that has become an ideological battleground because of the presence of a Confederate statue. So there you see the police actually, what was going on, they weren't even doing anything. So later, when you scroll down the article here, you can see it's talking about that. So this guy, DeAndre Harris, is saying that the police were standing by while he was being beat up. So, but it wasn't just, you have to understand, this whole scenario that's been put out by the media is wrong. It wasn't just a bunch of Nazi supporters and white supremacists. There were a few people like that. People were protesting the taking down of Robert E. Lee's statue, and that's a legitimate thing. And also, protesters, although I don't agree with white supremacists, whatever viewpoint, they have a right to protest, and the police weren't, allowing them to protest. In fact, it seems like they were standing around and waiting for these riots to occur. That's very interesting, to say the least. So, again, if we look at another article right here, we can see here on this article here, which I hope you can see here on the screen. This is about George Soros. And he is one of the main people who has funded the Black Lives Matter movement, many of the groups, the protests in Ferguson that happened, previously, and also the Antifa protesters were there. These people received funding from George Soros. So what kind of person is he? Well, supposedly he's a Jewish man, but he actually worked when he was a teenager to confiscate the property of other Jews. And if you look at this is a really interesting interview that he did previously, and he talks about the fact in this interview that, for instance, he does not believe in God, in fact. So he is causing this kind of fake racial strife, and then he can benefit from that when also he's caused a lot of economies to collapse, and he's persona non grata in Hungary because he's trying to collapse different economies in countries like Ukraine, like Hungary, in order to benefit himself through all the chaos that's caused. So this is a completely false and bogus narrative that's going on. So if you look at this article here, you can see the same thing. This talks more about George Soros and some of the things we were just talking about here, that he's funded a lot of these people. So you can't just say it was one side, oh, it's white nationalists. There were people there. Sure, there were some crazy racists there, but there are also people protesting and taking down Robert E. Lee's statue. And then there were people going around, these Antifa little punks going around with sticks beating people. And in fact, they were, if you watch this video here, they're showing like what was going on. Actually, why don't we actually watch this video here? I'll play this video now, and we can, see some of the things that were going on Saturday. So let's watch this video. So you can see it's very chaotic. There's no police around. So the protesters are marching down the street there. And then, so these guys, the police should have been there providing them a safe space to protest. So you see that Antifa guy or whatever with the red bandana started punching the guy out. Yeah, right. Real peaceful, nice guys there. Right. So there was things going on both sides. It's a completely false narrative to say, and then, but even more than just that, the false narrative to say is just one side. Who's funding these things? Even maybe someone's funding these radical protesters, and also who's funding the Black Lives Matter? We've already said, like George Soros funds that. So we have to really be aware of these, groups and who is actually funding them. Let's now watch this clip of President Trump talking about that's a very important thing to be aware of Saturday.
But when you say the alt-right, define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead.
Well,
define it for me. Come on, let's go.
Senator McCain defined them as the same group.
Okay, what about the alt-left that came charging at, excuse me, what about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
This is Senator McCain's statement.
Let me ask you this. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. So, as far as I'm concerned, That was a horrible, horrible day. Wait a minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news. That was a horrible day. I will tell you something. I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you have, you had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. You had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit, and they were very, very violent. Go ahead.
Do you think that what you call the alt-left is the same as neo-Nazis?
Those people, all of those people, excuse me, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. So, excuse me, and you take a look at some of the groups and you see, and you know it if you were honest reporters, which in many cases you're not, but many of those people were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. So, this week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? But they were there to protest, excuse me, you take a look the night before, they were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. Infrastructure question, go ahead.
Should statues of Robert E. Lee stay up?
I would say that's up to a local town, community, or the federal government, depending on where it is located.
Okay, so we've got President Trump, and he's explaining clearly that there were people on both sides who were at fault, and that there were legitimate issues, like people taking down Robert E. Lee's statue, like say who's going to come down next, Thomas Jefferson. I mean, really. So, to just say that this is a bunch of crazy, Nazi-loving, white racists, sure, there might have been a couple people like that. That is a wrong thing. So this is a very contrived debate. This is George Soros' racial war. This is not honest, straightforward reporting. So you need to look more deeply, I believe, into what's really going on. You know, I personally have been working in D.C. public schools now for 20 years. Most all the students I work with in D.C. public schools in Southeast Washington, also in Capitol Hill area, they're almost all black students. Hey, you know, I've been working with them very well for 20 years. You know, so this kind of contrived racial thing is totally bogus. I mean, that's not what it's about. That's not what's really the core thing that our nation's about. And this is something that, you know, the likes of George Soros particularly and others are trying to foment and create a false narrative. So I urge you look at a true narrative and don't buy into this false narrative. The President Trump is absolutely right. There are people trying to create a false narrative. There are media outlets, even like this NBC and all these different media outlets, CNN, creating false narratives, not really looking to what's really going on. And there are many serious questions, like I was saying at the beginning. Why didn't the police separate these people? Why didn't they honor their right to free speech? Why did they just let the people you know, smash one another and they're just standing there and let it happen? Yeah, that's free speech. Sure, I go down there to express my opinion. Someone's going to crack you over the head with a 2x4. Yeah, some free speech. And the police are just standing there. Oh, okay. Right, that's crazy. So, absolutely don't buy into this false narrative. You know, I say, you know, buy into what's true and what's real. So here's a picture I'm going to show of the youth I was working with at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts in D.C. So what's real is that people want to work together. As Reverend Moon said, the blood flowing in our veins is the same. This is a fake, false narrative. We shouldn't be so stupid as to let people who benefit from chaos like George Soros take advantage of us. So look beyond. Seek a real viewpoint. Don't buy into these false, fake narratives, and look and see what's really happening. Of course, people who did crimes, like that person who ran over and murdered, a lady and a bunch of other people, of course, they have to be prosecuted. But it's not right to just say one side was at fault. And it's not just one side or the other side. The whole thing is a contrived, fake thing trying to create a racial divide that doesn't exist and shouldn't exist. White folks like myself don't hate black people. We love people. We're all God's children. So I'll end on that note, and I'll end also by including this picture here of, like I said, our work at Duke Ellington School of the Arts. So I do hope you will think about what I've shared tonight, and do like and subscribe this video. And until next time, this is Richard Urban reporting from historic Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Be blessed and have a good night.